So, of all the ones that you worked, which ones had you the most confused? I'm gonna go through each one of them. But which one had you most confused?
3A
Yeah,
and 2B.
3A and 2B. Okay. So you're telling me that if you would have seen these on the test tomorrow for the first time, you may not have gotten them, or at least it would have caused you to stop and think a long time. Okay, so let's go over the ones that we are aware of and maybe feel a little bit better about. So 1A was 2x squared plus 8x minus 7, where x is greater than or equal to k, and they want you to write it in the form a parentheses x minus b closed squared plus c. So they want you to write in vertex form. So you have to complete the square. Okay, so some of you go ahead and factor out, that's okay. If you don't, we still started off the same way. You have to factor out anything in front of the x squared. So if you have a number or a negative or something, it has to be factored out. Make sure that looks okay, that line. All right, then we're going to write it like that. So make sure that that is what you got for 1A. Now, if not, this is your chance to ask questions. All right. All I want on B is you tell me -2 or k equals -2. I don't want a whole lot of greater than or equal to, that kind of thing. You can tell me x is greater than or equal to -2 if you want to, but that's not necessary.
I know you got the 2 from like 2 and -15.
This
And-
negative 2 and 15. That's my vertex, -15.
So do you change both of the signs?
No, you only change. This is because you're solving for what x is.
Okay.
So you pull it out, set it equal to 0. That's the x of your vertex.
So why would k be x and not y? I thought
Because in the inverse, y becomes x and x becomes y. So if you'll just, it's real easy to start overthinking that and get really confused. But if you'll think about it, if this is my vertex at -2, -15, if I split it down the middle here, this is where I can have an inverse. Okay? And so, yes, technically, in the regular, this is the x, but if I do the inverse of it, it is the y. Okay? Any other questions on that one? Very good. All right, C. So in order to find the inverse of a quadratic, the best thing to do is to start with the vertex form. I don't want to see anybody trying to change a quadratics finding its inverse by using the standard form. You've got to go back up there. That's why they usually ask you for this somewhere in a preceding question. They will typically ask you for that, and then some steps down, it'll ask you for the inverse. So y becomes x, x becomes y. So the first thing I did is I added the 15 over right here. Then I divided by the 2. So that left me x plus 15. I added the 15. And then I divided everything by 2. That's how I got here. Then I take the square root of it. And once I take the square root of it, that leaves me y plus 2, so I have to subtract the 2 over. Just erase that. All right, questions on this one?
I have -4 plus the square root of x plus 5 over 2. Because after I square rooted.
You acted as if that 2 is under the square root with it. No, you have to get rid of that first inverse because it is not being square rooted with that. Yeah, you have to get rid of that 2 first because it's not part of the squared situation. Okay, good. Other questions? All right, was there a D? There was a D. Guys, on these, you have got to train yourself to start reading these like a GPS or like a recipe or something like that. If it's asking you, the first thing it asks you to do, it may ask you to solve, it may ask you to work out values. But in either way, you are going to get me numbers. Okay? And so in this case, when it's asking you to work out values of f of x greater than 3, this is telling you to take the f of x at the top, set that here, and put greater than 3 behind it. So when you do that, you should see that you have a quadratic inequality. And no, have we gone over that in the past couple of days? No. But you're going to learn in these Cambridge classes, we never leave anything for too long. So if you've been taught it, you cannot expect that I would reteach it again. You are expected to remember it. So in this case, when you have a quadratic inequality, you have to move this over. This has to be 0. Then you will do your sign chart. Okay, y'all can get out your phones for 1 minute. All right, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. All right, let's put them up. All right, so we have a quadratic inequality. This is just telling you how you're setting up the problem. They don't want to spell it out for you. They're wanting you to be able to follow instructions because one day in the real world, you're going to have to follow instructions. Okay? So they want you to be able to understand what they're asking you to do. So you set up the sign chart. This sign right here tells me that you want the positive sections of it, which will be x is less than -5, x is greater than 1. Okay? All right, problem number 2. Was everything okay with problem number 2? Or do some people have one that part of it that would be 2B? Oh, yeah, the graph. Okay. Because you've been taught how to graph lines before, but it's been a while, so that's understandable. All right, so on 2A, they want you to just find the inverse, no biggie, okay? 2A, y becomes x, x becomes y, add the 7, divide by 2. That's your 2A. Linears are the best. Okay, so let me just graph this one completely. You can see what it's going to look like. This is a sketch. Okay, let me go to So, it asked you to draw these on the same graph. Your f of x was 2x minus 7. Now, I know y'all know how to draw lines, but it may have been that it was a while. How do I start off drawing the f of x? Negative 7 on which axis? The y, because this is the y-intercept. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's a sketch. So what's the slope? 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. Okay, so now I'm going to try to connect those dots. Okay. There's your f of x. Any questions about drawing that line? All right, now they asked you to draw the inverse, which was, somebody remind me what it was, x plus 7 over 2? Okay. Now, this looks a little bit more difficult to draw. How could I rewrite this in such a way that it would make it easier to see? All right, x over 2 plus 7 over 2. So where would I start? 7 over 2, which is 3.5. So 1, 2, 3 and a half. Now the slope is up 1 over 2. Down 1 over 2. Up 1 over 2. Up 1 over 2. Down 1 over 2, down 1 over 2. Okay, so questions about how we graph it on the same line. On the same graph. You're just graphing both lines. All right, we're okay on that? That refresh your memory? Feel a little bit better about it? Okay. Okay, so now the third part of this, they asked you for g of f. That's asking you for a composite function. The f is going inside the g. What was the f equation? Now, here's one thing Cambridge loves to do. They love to give you information, and then 14 parts later, you have to go back and use that information in part Z. Okay? So you may have been looking at C and going, oh, I can't find, where's the F? What's going on? You're going to have to get used to going back up and finding it. So the F was given as 2x minus 7. The G is given as 3x squared plus x. Now, I'm going to see if you think this is correct. So my F is going inside my G. All right, one extreme extremely common mistake that I see happen a lot is that when you substitute in, we're used to substituting in one time, we do it one time, and we forget to do it if there is another x. So I should have also put a 2x minus 7 there. You do have to expand this, which means you FOIL first. So I can distribute here. I'm going to just go on and FOIL. So 2x times 2x is 4x squared minus 28x plus 49. So that's 12x squared minus 84x plus 147. And then I'm just combining like terms. Now, you can check to see if this is equivalent to this. Now, all that will tell you is that this is equivalent to this. This doesn't tell you that you started this one out right. So if you left that plus x, you will get an equivalent answer, but it doesn't mean that you started off correctly. All right, any questions on 2C? All right, let's go ahead to this. 3 on the back page, so y'all said 3A confused you. What I also want y'all to understand is just because 3A may have confused you, you still could have done 3B. I hope you've learned that by now with Cambridge, that just because you cannot do one, that was supposed to be a G, just because you cannot do one part doesn't mean that you cannot do the other parts. Now, the only thing that this is telling you is that in this one's domain, x cannot be 5. That's all that means. Don't read more into that. So you're going to have to learn, and you're probably confused, like, well, when do I use it in the problem, when do I not? You're just going to have to let this year pass, and you'll learn. But this is only telling you the domain of that. All right, f of x is 3 plus x, and its domain is x is a set of all real numbers. That's not on there, but that should have been probably. All right, they want us to solve. Solve. Not rearrange, not substitute. It says solve GF equals x. So I'm going to get numbers here. So if I looked at this without this, so let me just cover this little part up right here. Okay, we're going to act like that's not there. What would that tell me to do? Put F into G. So that would be 2 times 3 plus x minus 1 over 3 plus x plus 5. Does that look correct? So then I look at the other side of it, and I'm supposed to do what to it? Equal it to x, because I've got to solve. So let me clean this up a little bit before I solve. Ooh, come on. So that's going to be 6 plus 2x minus 1 over 8 plus x equals x. Still cleaning it up. 5 plus 2x over 8 plus x equals x. So, how am I going to start solving this? Okay, multiply by the denominator. We can always start with that. So now that gives me 5 plus 2x equals multiply by 8 plus x, gets rid of it here, multiply by it here. So that gives me this, and I'm about to see something that I'm going to like. I like these now. What do I have? A quadratic. What do I need to do? Get everything to one side. Does it matter which side? No. I'm just going to move my 5, and I'm going to move my 2x. Now, one thing you have to be careful of is that you keep your A, B, and C in proper order. Now, you could have written it 6x plus x squared minus 5. I wouldn't care, but your A is still going to be your A. And A always comes in front of the x squared. Your B always comes in front of the x, and your C is the constant. So you can put that in polysolve, and your roots are what? Okay.
0.742.
Does that look right? I hadn't worked it out. Okay.
And does it matter if we go to 3 significant figures?
You just follow. Now, what they'll tell you is, I think on the beginning, the front of their booklet, it says 3 significant figures. I think degrees has to the nearest degree. I have to go back and read it. Follow suit with that. Always give me 3. You can give me more. But if I say 3 in those specific instructions, it better be 3. But if I don't specify within those instructions, that's fine. Never give me less. Okay? So negative 6.74 and 0.742 would have been fine. Okay? Any other questions about this review? So we're kind of doing a little bit of a compromise. I don't want to show my hand and show you the entire test. I don't want y'all to get used to the test looking like the review. So we're going to work away from this as the time goes on, a little bit more and more and more once y'all get used to it. But if you work the review and you try to start, don't wait for me to show you the answers. And do you understand what I mean when I said there's going to be some things you've got to apply? The things you've got to apply: 3A, 1D, and maybe 2B. Those were the application problems that I would hope that eventually I don't have to show you how to work those and spend a lesson on them. You start figuring out what Cambridge is asking for. All right, anything else? All right,
What
then.
was the answer to 3B?
Oh, I'm sorry. I never finished up 3B. Oh, yes. Thank you. We had to do the inverse. I was getting ahead of myself. So we had to do the inverse of G. So that means that we start off with the G as being 2x minus 1 over x plus 5. So the y becomes x, the x becomes y. Notice it did not say solve. It's just finding the inverse. So multiply, and I'm going to go on and distribute as I multiply. I'm taking this and I'm putting it right here. And I'm putting it right here. But those reduce to a 1. Bring my y terms together and my non-y terms together. Factor out a y. And as soon as you start solving for y, you better go back in and make it that. That's the answer. Now, if you moved everything to opposite sides, all your signs will be opposite. And I don't care if it said negative 5x minus 1 or negative 2 plus x. Either all your signs are the same or the difference, the order does not matter. So we're good on those?